Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing this morning?
Good.
Good. Who's heard of the Ohio Council of Retail Merchants? All right, so we've been in business since 1922, 7,000 members statewide, so we're a statewide organization, headquartered in Columbus. Core business for the association really is advocacy. So we are at the State House. We have two full-time government relations professionals that are at the State House talking about retail issues with the General Assembly and with the governor. And retail in Ohio, obviously many of you, has everybody here a retailer by trade? Economic development? Yeah. And jeweler? What's your business?
Coyote Beads and Jewelry.
Okay, so retail, how about you, sir?
Service org, ISP.
Okay, good. Just a couple of tidbits about the retail industry. Retail in Ohio is essentially 1 in 4 Ohio jobs, both indirectly and directly in the state. Retail employs about 1.5 million people, which is larger than any other industry in the state. Represents about 18% of the state's GDP. Our organization, we represent the world's largest retailers to the small independents, many like your stores or locations. We have a jewelers division of retailers. These are statistics that you probably know about the state. Like I said, 1 in Ohio, 1 in 4 jobs in Ohio is directly or indirectly employed by the retail industry. And if you think about the retail supply chain, and many times for our larger members, we were with our friends from Macy's last week. You know, they're putting distribution centers in Ohio. So you have distribution jobs, you have the e-commerce jobs, and you have the traditional retail jobs in the brick and mortar stores. Obviously, Ohio is a great spot. I'm sure you've probably heard about the 600-mile circle around Ohio hits about 2/3 of the U.S. population, which is great for distribution. So I was with the grand opening in Troy Township, Ohio, I think 4 years ago when Home Depot opened their large distribution center. They put it in Ohio because of location and population. It's a good spot to move goods. Wholesale obviously is a big part of retail. We have a wholesale division. Just kind of give you some basic numbers and total impact for the state and the jobs that are employed by these companies. We broke it down by congressional district, by the 4th and 5th districts, and you can kind of get an idea of how many retail establishments are in these congressional districts. And then this is the 5th district. I'll kind of talk about our role a little bit. Any of you guys follow happenings in the State House or what's going on, the tax changes? Does that keep you up at night, or policy changes in DC? It doesn't? How about the internet? Does that keep you up at night? It doesn't? Okay, all right. So on an annual basis, I would say annual or even biennial basis, legislators in Columbus, we'll probably monitor 200 pieces of legislation. Issues or tax policy. A big issue for us was the U.S. Supreme Court decision from June of 2018 saying that there is economic nexus. So a company who is selling things into Ohio who doesn't have a brick and mortar facility now has to collect and remit the state sales tax. So Ben, we had a lot of jewelers talk about jewelers in Indiana selling Rolex watches into Ohio residents and not charging sales tax. And the comments that we heard is, look, we got big ticket items and small boxes. And so it's very easy to ship things. We heard from furniture dealers where furniture was being shipped from Indiana, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Kentucky into the state, no sales tax, and our brick and mortar merchants here in the state, they have to charge a sales tax. It's state law. And so we worked with our partner, the National Retail Federation in DC, and we're finally able to get a court decision. So just this past July, Ohio conformed with the U.S. Supreme Court decision. So that was a big issue for us, is that we wanted a level playing field for brick and mortar retail and online only. Back to school holiday, did anybody shop the first Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the month? That was an issue that we had asked the General Assembly to pass initially in 2014, and then last year, the holiday became permanent. So we were excited about that, and a lot of members explained that they had increased sales during that weekend, and so that was a great thing for us. And then this is the issue where I think chambers like Bowling Green and others can be really helpful. Have they talked about this in Bowling Green City Council about ban on taxing plastic bags or any issues like that?
We actually
Not at all for
have.
the last 7 months.
Oh, no.
We
I
have.
just can't make a decision.
We have an ordinance that was tabled actually this past council meeting until we see what the state's gonna do.
Yeah, and so there is legislation right now at the state level. What we're hearing from our members that have multiple locations and have to operate in different jurisdictions, as you probably could imagine, is you can't have the regulations in one city and different regulations in the next. It's very hard for businesses to try to follow both rules. And we have members who sell tobacco, and we have many cities throughout the state do tobacco to 21. And we said, look, we're not going to take a position on whether the age should be 18 or 21, but we just want the same rules across the board. And so what we've asked is some state preemption. This issue has just passed in Cuyahoga County in the Cleveland area. And so bags will be banned in January 1, I believe, is when the ordinance becomes effective. So what we're seeing with local issues like this is trying to provide any resources that we can to local communities to have an honest conversation with their lawmakers. And Mary, I'll offer this up to you. We'd be happy to send you all of our information and let you send that out to your members on things that are happening and what's impactful, or what we're seeing happening in Steubenville or Cincinnati or Dayton. And we can share that information with you. So it kind of gives you a leg up on these are what other communities in the state are doing. You can talk to your members and kind of get what they feel on the issue. But we think it's really important that local businesses should be having these conversations with members of council. We think it's very important, and then we're happy to take it at the state level. Other issues we work on, regulatory reform, workers' comp, those are big issues that continue to pop up every year. An issue that we've been really working on this is in the past 18 months is workforce. We keep hearing from our member companies of having a trained workforce or having members of their workforce that can do basic inventory math. And so what we've created with our partner, the National Retail Federation, is a retail credentialing program. We've partnered with the Ohio Department of Education. Rise Up program was certified by the Department of Education. And the hope is what we look at as retailers is many of the jobs or many of the people whom you employ, these are full-time permanent jobs, maybe they're part-time jobs. And we have this experience or awesome responsibility that we're probably Ohioans or Americans' first job. And so how can we provide them a good environment to learn the basic skills of being a good employee? And maybe they go on to work in different industries, but if we have the responsibility of employing them first, let's give them a good skill set. And so Rise Up is being offered in the K through 12 education. It started in August of last year. And really, because of the late certification last year, we're really gearing up to kind of launch this in all the different school districts. And the cost is relatively inexpensive. It's $100 for the certification. And I can kind of give you some of the examples, and you'll think many of these are pretty basic. What we're finding is a lot of people don't have these basic skills when they're entering the workforce. And the hope is that someone who's looking to better themselves gets this credential. Maybe they go to community college, maybe they go on and get a bachelor's degree, or maybe they move on to another vocation where they can learn something, a skill, and be productive. That's the role or the hope. Did you get your picture? We can give you the slides too if it helps. Any questions so far? I'm moving these slides kind of pretty quickly.
On the Rise Up,
Yeah.
is that something we facilitate through the chamber, or is that something you would work directly with the schools and we need to make those connections?
Both. You can do it. You can do it both ways.
Because you said K through 12.
It is. So Department of Education liked our credential because there is no requirement to have a high school diploma before you take the credential, so it can be offered in many of the vocational programs. So it can be done through the high school, or the chamber could actually proctor the exam. Everything is online based, but if you had 20 merchants that wanted to have 20 employees certified, we could work together with you and kind of make that happen.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Any other questions on other content that I've already covered, or thoughts, interests? Okay, so this is kind of the what's next of retail. We've partnered with the National Retail Federation again to kind of look at what is next in retail. And many of these topics that you're familiar with: cybersecurity, payment authentication. How do I accept Apple Pay? What is the next Apple Pay? Are people going to have wallets? Big data. How do I use big data in my business? Artificial intelligence, transportation logistics. How to move products from A to B. And what we're finding is, as you're all familiar, that technology is disrupting business, regular business. So how can we partner with these technologies and the companies that could utilize these technologies and create what we call an innovation atmosphere? It'd be like an accelerator. Do you guys have a business incubator in Bowling Green?
We're working on, we also
In the
have
process.
SIFT, which is for food, it's ag,
Okay.
and a couple in Toledo.
Yeah, that's great. So what we're finding is, if you look at retail tech, and then you guys heard of fintech, financial technology, they're really they really touch each other, because if you look at Ben, if you're authenticating a payment from somebody who's buying a gold watch, you want to make sure that transaction is secure on your side, but also Chase Bank, who is the underwriter of the card, wants to make sure that transaction is secure. So we're looking at all these different technologies as a way to kind of help our smaller businesses in the state, and our big companies partner and stay relevant in the eyes of their customer. So I went through all this pretty fast. I think that's the end of our slides, isn't it, John? Any questions or thoughts about what we're doing in Columbus?
Do you have any statistics on e-commerce or online sales versus actual?
What would you
brick-and-mortar?
think the online
Well,
sales were in 2018?
Amazon effect made it seem like it was just crushing the retail, and latest figures I heard, it's only 3%.
In 2018, 13% of all retail transactions were e-commerce.
So 13%.
So 87% were brick and mortar. Yeah.
Do your analytics break it down by county across the state, or is it just a state number?
We don't. It's a national number. It's not even a state number. I would say Ohio is probably more on the 10%. I would argue. We're just a little bit behind the national average on a couple indicators. E-commerce is going to continue to grow. What we're finding is who is selling things brick and mortar and online both? Are you
Stacy.
your firm?
Stacy is.
Yourself. So you have an omni-channel and so that really is, and frankly, omni-channel is kind of the buzzword. I would make it more simple and say it's the consumer channel. However your consumer wants to buy, how he or she wants to buy goods, you have to be able to provide that as a retailer. And the experience they have online has to be the same experience they have in the store. So if someone is on your website and they're going to buy something, they need to have that same experience as they come into your brick and mortar establishment. And I think what's happening is consumers now have so many choices. I was at a workforce development program in October of last year, and I was talking to the chairman of BJ's, which is kind of like a Costco, but it's on the eastern coast, and he said, 20 years ago, we used to pick the spot, we'd build the building, we'd put the times on the front door and watch people wait in line to come in. But those days are gone. Now people can buy online, or they have more options. And so, providing that consumer channel or that omni-channel is really important to engage your customers. How's it going?
How do you count in-store pickups? I mean, it's really bought online, but you put your foot in the door to pick it up. And then while you're there, you buy all the other junk that you don't need too.
Well, buy things you might not realize you needed.
Right, yes.
That's becoming a big part of retail, especially with the bigger chains. Walmart has a carousel that I've seen in Columbus where it's all kept in this huge tower inside. Maybe many of you've seen it.
We've got it.
You got it here, yeah. We saw the one open in Columbus, maybe it was last year. But that's becoming a big part too of customers buying online and picking up in the store. And then I think the partnership between Kohl's and Amazon, where you can buy things on Amazon, but you can return them at Kohl's to make that process. Another thing too that hasn't really become a major public policy issue is the transportation network. Highways, roads, bridges, and transportation network really is designed for 18-wheel trucks or trucks to park it behind your store, unload the goods, and then customers come in and drive their vehicles to your store. Well, with FedEx trucks, UPS trucks, Amazon Prime trucks, DHL trucks, you know, I can only imagine what your neighborhoods were like during the holidays, but I can tell you there are UPS trucks and FedEx trucks going through my neighborhood all hours of the day. When do communities kind of pump the brakes and say, look, I have 4 kids and I don't want these UPS trucks going 35 miles an hour down my street when my kids are getting off the school bus. And so when do we start having those conversations? Because how we shop as consumers really has shifted quite a bit.
As retailers, would you see that maybe some training in how to move yourself to e-commerce on top of what you're doing is something that would be well attended, or at least to get people started? Because sometimes it's scary till you hear from somebody that's been successful at it. And yeah. Yes?
Yes.
How is business? I mean, we can open it up and I'm just curious how folks are doing.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, we have a little different scenario
We
this year with
have, yeah.
construction, but I think the merchants can tell you how things are going this year versus last year. We had a little construction last year also, but the construction will wrap up this fall, and then the roads will be left nicer. It'll be a much nicer place after the fall, so that issue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was telling Mary and Tony earlier, we had dinner last night at Trotters, and we had the little brown jug for dinner. And downtown is very neat. Let me ask a question. How much of your sales are based on the impact of Bowling Green being here? Is it a big part of the economy from your perspectives?
You mean the university?
Yeah, the university.
Stacy,
Depends on
what
what you
percent do you think yours is? Because
Yeah.
she's
Yeah. If you're a bar,
OT.
a lot.
Yeah.
But Stacy's clients are the college girls, a lot of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Professors that live here as
65%.
well.
Mhm.
It picks up for everyone when the students are back here.
Okay.
There isn't anyone I don't think that's not affected by the students being back, and they come back next week.
How about
Some
you,
are
Gail?
friends.
What do you think your ratio is?
It's a big chunk of my business, yeah.
What is your business?
I own a bead store and
Okay.
jewelry store in Bowling Green.
Nice. Stacy, was it?
Mhm.
How about you?
I own a clothing boutique on Worcester and Main Motto.
You pass it on your way from,
Yeah.
Trotters.
Yeah, that's great.
And Ben, he's affected by it too, because a lot of those students get engaged while they're here, and
Yes, but ironically, the majority of our engagement rings are from the county. Because typically guys will go back to their hometown to buy engagement. So the university doesn't directly affect us, but indirectly it does. But we don't get a whole lot of college kids.
I do have one more statistic I'm hoping you have. Holiday retail. What portion of that is usually your sales, annual sales for the year? So what percentage?
I think it's different for various categories of retail. We still call it the month where everybody goes in the black for the year. But I would say grocery retail is probably a little more flat throughout the year. But I would say traditional retail, general merchandise is probably, Black Friday on, or really, I would back it up. I would say probably mid-November on is really when there's an uptick. We used to do a jewelry show in Columbus in August. We quit doing it about 12 years ago, and about 10 years ago, and that was the time, and obviously in the jewelry business, where that was kind of like the last time where retail jewelers could buy their wholesale jewels and have them in the store for the holidays. That's changed. I mean, that you probably can buy whatever you need whenever you need it with supply chain now.
Yeah, but I like that show too.
I know, it was a great show, and frankly, we just saw how the internet changed that. It changed the shopping habits of how jewelry is purchased. And I don't know if you know Jack Seibert. He's on our board. He owns a jewelry store in Columbus, in Upper Arlington, right there on Lane Avenue. It's even changed. I mean, even when the downturn, he was buying and selling gold and doing different things to kind of keep his business afloat. And I think the economy is ticked up, and he's doing great now. But the one thing I think that is impactful from why smaller merchants, I think, really are going to have a leg up on I would say big box is experience and the customer service that you can provide. That is these niche type sectors of retail, where it's jewelry or it's clothing, or you're kind of doing beads and jewelry both. You have offerings that a traditional big box retail may not have, or have the ability to provide this service and the experience. And a lot of the papers I've read about the millennials and Gen X and more millennials is that they want the experience. They want the conversation. They want to know what they're buying. They want to know if it's from sustainable sources. They want to know where you're sourcing these items. And so having the experience, I think, is very, very important. And you're seeing that change because I don't need to see the Crest toothpaste that I buy. I can buy it online. But if I'm going to go and buy something for my wife, I want to go talk to Ben and say, hey, what do you recommend? Here's my budget, number one. But here's what I'm looking for. This is what my wife likes, and he'd probably spend 25 minutes with me walking through and saying, this is what I think your wife may like. And that's impactful. That's going to continue those repeat sales.
Yeah, you can't get that at Costco.
No. And some of these companies are my members, and it's just different.
Huh?
But you can get your tire changed where you're working.
That's true.
Yeah, you can buy a $1 hot dog too.
Or buy life insurance.
Yeah. So, any other questions or thoughts, general thoughts about what's going on in the industry? I'd be happy to try to answer.
The reason I asked about the holiday retail is we're going right from what you're talking about into our shop small business workshop, so that we're ready for the holidays. Especially this year, we want to make sure we make the biggest impact and we shout the loudest for people to come here and shop locally. On top of our tax rate being lower than any of our neighboring communities, again, we've got great customer service, and they carry great products in their stores.
Yeah. What's the sales tax rate in this county?
6.7.
Yeah.
What do you foresee for the next couple of years in regards to recession within the retail market, or do you not see that?
No, I think retail is people will say this is retail apocalypse. I think it's an exciting time in the industry. I still see fundamental shifts and changes. There's a lot of square footage of retail in the country, when you compare to other nations. I think what we're seeing is the retailers who are not being successful lost where their customer was. And Sears, who's been a member we've been in business for 97 years. I think they've been a member for close to 80. Is struggling, trying to find what their identity is from what they were in the past. I think Walmart's done a very good job of pivoting to try to be where their modern day customer is. But I think the bottom line is just retailers, as merchants or retailers, need to remember where your customer is and how you reach them and sell them things when and where and how they want them. So to answer your question on recession, looking at my crystal ball, I think we've had this 11 years of growth, so which is unheard of and from a historical perspective. If you look at the U.S. economy, I think that the tariffs in China are beginning to have an impact. Has it hurt any of your supply chains? Have you seen anything as an impact? Yeah, and I would say that the moving of delaying of some of the products until December 15 is probably going to be somewhat helpful. I'm hearing that a lot of merchants are pushing back a little bit if they have the ability on the vendors, but I think it's causing a lot of issues, and we've been having conversations with the administration on the impact. You know, it's not just our industry, but it's agriculture. They're not selling soybeans like they were, so, which has an impact. If farmers aren't doing well, they're not coming in and buying from your stores.
We've got a huge agriculture community here.
Yeah.
Wood County is the highest, is in the Wall Street Journal, I believe, a week ago. It is the highest county in the nation for unaffected crops.
Well, in Ohio.
You know,
Or in Ohio.
Wood County.
Yeah, Wood County.
yeah, I was with Adam Sharp. He runs the Farm Bureau, Ohio Farm Bureau. We were 2 weeks ago, and 1.5 million acres in Ohio weren't planted, I think, is what Adam told me. And the other issues, there's really two issues with the soybean crop. I wasn't aware. I'm aware of the tariff impact, but I guess in China, the swine flu is going to probably eliminate half of the herd in China, which they were importing our soybeans for hog feed, and so that has an impact as well. So they don't have the need as they had maybe a year or 2 years ago.
They don't have the need, plus you also have the farmers who couldn't plant corn, who now plant soybeans, and so now you have an overabundance of soybeans in your market, and your market is shrunk. So the prices are going up.
One last figure I
Yeah.
want to try and pull out of your head. We've always talked about spending your dollar local, on how much of it stays local if you shop at these mom and pop shops versus going down to a big box store versus shopping online. I think we used to do 62 cents stays local if they shop at a mom and pop shop. It drops to 40 cents at Walmart and 0 online. Are those statistics still?
You know, we've never broken down that's interesting. Maybe we can look into that. I would say online is probably not 0, because I think what's happening is you're online, so your dollars are staying here local. So I think you're seeing smaller merchants or medium-sized merchants utilize the omni-channel that many of the larger retailers have had the ability to use for several years now. So I just think. We'll look into that. We haven't broken it down by
Because
dollar.
we've used it as a part of our shop local sort of information, and I want to keep it accurate, and I know those numbers do change, so
Yeah,
if you do have them, that would be great.
yeah, we'll look into it for you. John, take some notes for me.
To-do list.
Yeah. But we're in Columbus. We've got 6 people who work full time for us, and we've got 2 marketing firms that do things for us. We also have a law firm and all the other services, and we do provide some services to our smaller merchants. We do group rating. I'm sure maybe the Bowling Green Chamber has a workers' comp program. But we really try to be the voice of retail in the State House, and we've been doing it for 97 years. So I think it is uttermost important for you to belong to your local chamber, and this isn't a sales pitch for my organization. I think everything needs to really start local and be a big part of your local community. But I think the message is we're at the State House in Columbus, and we're trying to be impactful on state regulation, even some federal things that may trickle down to Bowling Green or Wood County or count the other 87 counties in the state. And so, Mary, if you like, we can put you on our mailing list, send you all the information. The only thing we ask is if just credit where it came from, but you use it. I completely understand your membership base is your stock and trade, so we would never want that. But there is information I think that many of your members may want to know about.
Certainly.
We'd be happy to provide that.